It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and of course, you are listening to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. This is show 484, and I have a really nice and long, interview / discussion with Dan Ellis, a good friend of mine from the beautiful state of Utah, and we talk about a whole lot of things. It's more of a hot topic kind of thing where whatever's going on in the news, we talked about it, so I wanted to get it out, quicker maybe than normal, but I still had a few days delay, and part of that was caused by some fuckery, I guess, at Schwab. So this is for anyone that had an account at TD Ameritrade that switched to Schwab in calendar year 2023. I've talked about this in the past, but I want to make sure I give the full, and I hope now the final update on what you should expect. So if you had an account at TD Ameritrade at any time in 2023, and at any time in 2023, that account went to Schwab, because you might have an account through retail that did it different than through the institutional side where my clients went through. So all of my clients, the funds moved in the first weekend of September. When you do your taxes, if you are due a 1099 document at all, and keep in mind, you will not get those for IRAs and Roth IRAs and other qualified accounts. And of course, in the world of brokerage accounts and mutual fund accounts, the first main factor to divide all of the accounts is the category qualified and not qualified or non-qualified. We've talked about this technical distinction in the past, so I don't want to go too far into it, but just an old-timey, conventional, taxable, individual or joint tenants brokerage account falls in the category of not qualified, and an IRA and Roth IRAs and many other types of accounts are qualified. And it means they're qualified for some kind of special tax treatment, like a deferment, delay, or avoidance of taxes. So a regular account is not qualified. An IRA is qualified. Okay, so now that we beat that dead horse, if you have a non-qualified account, for almost everybody, that's going to be an individual taxable account or a joint tenants taxable account. There are other options, but that's going to cover it for most people. You will get a 1099. If you had an account at TD Ameritrade that then moved to Schwab, you will get, you're supposed to get, and you will need to complete your taxes for 2023, you will need both of the 1099s. The document from TD Ameritrade will cover any kinds of dividends or capital gains, recognized realized gains during the time the accounts and the positions were at TD Ameritrade, and the Schwab one will cover stuff from the Schwab time period. You are no longer able in any way, shape, or form to log on to anything related to TD Ameritrade at a TD Ameritrade website, so don't even try. You have a couple of options. First of all, most everybody should have gotten their Schwab 1099, and that should have been like normal. The TD Ameritrade 1099s were running late. And big brokerage firms like Schwab, TD Ameritrade, Vanguard, Fidelity, they all do these 1099s in batches. They don't print them all, or they don't create all the PDFs in one day. They do them over periods of several weeks. And sometimes they run behind. It seemed like the Schwab documents were being put out pretty much on time, and the TD Ameritrade documents weren't. Schwab then told me and some clients that they were committed to having all of the TD Ameritrade documents compiled, prepared, created, drafted by February 29th. There still may be a few day delay if they're sending it to you in the mail, standard U.S. mail. If you don't have it yet, the next problem was that if you logged on to Schwab, the only 1099 you could get was the Schwab 1099. And that now appears to be all fixed. And I just was checking with one of my clients, and I've looked at a few other accounts where it's been added recently. And it now looks like if you go to any taxable account and you look for the header or the tab up at the top of the screen or near the top of the screen, it says Documents, and you scroll down, you can see statements, you can see trade confirmation, there's another header, letters, a couple other categories, but then there's one that says tax forms. If you have not modified the filter, you should see the 2 tax forms that were prepared in January and or February of calendar year 2024 for the year of 2023. If you do not see them, make double sure that higher up on the page where you can pick and choose what to filter on, that it clearly has, you have selected tax year 2023. There is space where you can put in a date range. Do not do that. If you have a date range, that's cool. The way that I do it to make sure that I'm looking at the right thing is I will select tax year and pick a different year, like 2021, and I'll apply the filter. And then I go back to the drop down. It says tax year 2023, and I apply the filter. And now I know I'm seeing everything that's available from calendar year 2023 from Schwab, plus the 1099 from TD Ameritrade. So hopefully you can see both of those. You can download the PDFs. You can print them in on paper if you want. You can, if you download the PDFs, you can send them to your tax preparer that probably have something like a portal where you can upload them. If you somehow already did your taxes, double check with your tax preparer to make sure that they had both 1099s. If your account is on the smaller side, it may not make any difference whatsoever. But if it's a bigger account, $1 million, $2 million or more, you could have gains or dividends of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars that were not included in the tax report, the tax documents that you prepared, and you will want to talk to your tax professional about that. And if you've already filed, you may want to refile the taxes. This is something we did cover many, many times. I told everybody you'd get documents from both companies, but that was a few months ago. So if you didn't remember that, if you were super fast and either did your own taxes or had your tax preparer do it and you only gave them one 1099 document, you may want to check into that. If this is just confusing as fuck, call me or email me. That's cool. We can talk about it. It's not a problem. It's my job. It's cool. But I wanted to make this intro to this segment, extra attention and not whimsy and fun about other stuff, because you need to do your taxes correctly. And if you do not include this in your taxes, this is information that the IRS specifically has, and they will know that you did not do your taxes correctly. If you're lucky, they'll say, hey, you didn't account for these gains, and they'll change. This is a new thing. I've had it happen to me a couple of times now. Never would have happened in the past, where the IRS and even some states now will say, hey, thanks for your taxes. You didn't include something, so we've included it for you, and we've changed the amount of money that you owe. or the amount of money that we are going to pay you back, we don't think that's the right amount. And they'll change the numbers for you. So keep an eye on for that. And again, this is another reason I have a tax professional. When it's happened to me, I'll get a couple of page document, kind of like a summary report where the IRS says, we have changed your tax return. And here's what we think are the correct numbers. And I look at that and I go, that's cool. That's a lot of numbers. And I had to pull out my tax preparation documents. If you don't know how to read them because they're really fucking complicated, give that letter to your tax preparer and they can do that work for you. And they can look at what the IRS says you owe and compare that to what you filed. And they might go, oh shit, I didn't report this one thing because you didn't give me a document, or I didn't know it, or I put it in the wrong category. And you may or may not recall, but when I moved to Florida, I changed from CPA number 1 in the Midwest to CPA number 2 in Florida, and fought with that CPA number 2 all last year until October. And it was a fucking nightmare for me. Like my wife at one point, I encapsulated it perfectly. She did. She said, when you have to audit your accountant, you need a new accountant. Thankfully, after I finally had them submit taxes, which I believed to be wrong, but I couldn't handle dealing with them anymore. So I told them to submit what they had. I paid a tax accountant number 3. So I paid a second time to file my 22 calendar year taxes. And that person, accountant number 3, found multiple mistakes that accountant number 2 made. A couple of them were honest mistakes. A couple of them I consider to be incompetence. And a couple of them, they were being creative in calculating how much I owed. I don't want my accountant to be creative. I want to pay the taxes that I have to pay because I don't want to get fucking audited. So I'm okay. I make money. Paying taxes to me is an obligation. It's an honor to help people out that aren't doing as well, to support the system. Yes, the government's all full of fuckery. And please, if you're going to send me an email, I'm just asking you in advance not to, saying, oh, Phil, you could always pay more taxes on your own. No, that's not how it fucking works. So no, it doesn't make any sense for me unilaterally to pay more voluntarily than what I have to. But I think people should not be so freaked the fuck out to be part of a modern society to pay taxes. All right. Anyway, I'll get off that side soapbox. But so I only finally finished the revisions and everything that we had to unfuck from tax preparer number 2 by hiring tax accountant specialist number 3. My 22 taxes were only finalized a month ago. And so I am ecstatic that I am hopefully a day or 2 or a week away from filing all of my 2023 taxes, only about a month after my 22 taxes were finalized. So the 2022 year was a tax year for me that never fucking ended. Also, as a funny side note, if I haven't mentioned it before, tax professional number 2 sent me a letter saying that I was fired as a client, which cool. But anyway, so that's my drama, hopefully not your drama. And hopefully your taxes aren't 150. Hopefully your taxes are 150 pages long. That means you're doing well. But I have the interview with Dan Ellis coming up. I also have an update, a modification on the 18-year performance thing. Someone asked me to do it without bonds, and I did. And I talk about that in that segment at length. I'm not real confident that it's legitimate anymore because of how much effort I had to go and make to change my spreadsheet. And I talk about many of those reasons in that segment, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But good luck with your taxes. You should get 2 1099s for any accounts that you get 1099s for. You won't get a 1099 for an IRA or a Roth IRA. So, don't look for those. You have questions, call me. If you can't see what I said you could see when you log into Schwab, you can also call Schwab. You can call me, but you can also call Schwab. Anywho, take a quick break and get on with the rest of the show.
And they told me the story all about this guy named Lehi who lived in Jerusalem in 600 BC. Now, apparently, in Jerusalem in 600 BC, everyone was completely bad and evil, every single one of them, man, woman, child, infant, fetus. And God came to Lehi and said to him, "Put your family on a boat and I will lead you out of here." And God did lead them. He led them to America. I said, "America? From Jerusalem to America by boat in 600 BC? And they said, yes. Then they told me how Lehi and his descendants reproduced, and over the course of 600 years, there were two great races of them, the Nephites and the Lamanites. And the Nephites were totally, totally good, each and every one of them, and the Lamanites were totally bad and evil, every single one of them, just bad to the bone. Then, after Jesus died on the cross for our sins, on his way up to heaven, he stopped by America and visited the Nephites. And he told them that if they all remained totally, totally good, each and every one of them, they would win the war against the evil Lamanites. But apparently somebody blew it, because the Lamanites were able to kill all the Nephites, all but one guy, this guy named Mormon, who managed to survive by hiding in the woods. And he made sure this whole story was written down in reformed Egyptian hieroglyphics chiseled onto gold plates, which he then buried near Palmyra, New York. Well, I was just on the edge of my seat. I said, "What happened to the Lamanites?" And they said, "Well, they became our Native Americans here in the U.S." And I said, "So you believe the Native Americans are descended from a people who were totally evil?" And they said, "Yes." Then they told me how this guy named Joseph Smith found those buried gold plates right in his backyard. And he also found this magic stone back there that he put into his hat and then buried his face into. And this allowed him to translate the gold plates from the Reformed Egyptian into English. Well, at this point, I just wanted to give these two boys some advice about their pitch. I wanted to say, okay, don't start with this story. I mean, even the Scientologists know to start with a personality test before they start telling people all about Xenu, the evil intergalactic overlord.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. This is a quick little follow-up on a segment I did a few weeks back, called 18-Year Performance. A listener asked me a really good question. They said, Phil, how would have your plan done if you didn't have cushion? I mean, you did it for someone who's in retirement. What would happen if that person in retirement wanted to take all the risk and be in stocks? Would they have made more? So I thought, okay, well, that can't be that hard to calculate. Boy, was I wrong. So the first thing I did is I just zeroed out all the bonds, right? Because if there's no bonds, I zero out all the bonds. Well, then, of course, I didn't start with $1 million. I started with $700,000 because the original state of this was an assumption that you had $300,000 out of your million was in bonds. And when I make that zero, the $1 million falls to $700,000. So that didn't work. And then I thought, well, maybe I could just do it as a ratio, and then extrapolate it or, revise it up at the end to compensate for the 30% loss. And then I realized, well, that won't work because I'm taking out $50,000 a year. So That's not cool because the 50 grand would no longer be 5%, but a materially larger percent of the 700,000. So that won't work. And so I had to start from the beginning way back in 2006 and kind of extrapolate up, not round up. Yeah, extrapolate up, I guess. I don't know. Make bigger numbers for the stocks than they were in the original calculation. And then do that for each and every year all the way until 2023, the end of 2023. And of course, keep in mind, this is just a spreadsheet. I'm going around and I'm fucking with the numbers, right? So there is a possibility that I'm tricking myself. There's a possibility that I'm just intentionally tricking you. It's a complicated, big spreadsheet with a lot of possibilities for mistakes, errors, self-delusion, maybe. And of course, as I'm making these adjustments, I do have some memory of how things went that year and or the next year, right? So I could intentionally increase or decrease the good things and bad things the year before, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, without knowing what happens in the future. But I do. So I tried my best to be fair and do all of this. Now, a couple of caveats, just like in the 18-year performance segment. No one actually had this portfolio. This is not a real portfolio. Past performance does not guarantee future results. This does not include any fees that your advisor might take. It also, very importantly, doesn't deal correctly at all. Not even close with dividends. That just made it way too complicated. So I removed dividends from all of the models. And why that's important is because if you have $1 million portfolio and the stocks and bonds combined produce a 2.5% yield, that's $25,000. If you're taking $50,000 out, you have $25,000 as cash to remove, and then you have to sell $25,000 of something that is in the portfolio. Since I left dividends out, when the dividends are included in the total returns, to be fair, but when I'm taking $50,000 out, I'm selling something. This in no way takes into account tax consequences, the difference between having investments in a taxable versus a tax deferred or a tax-free account like a Roth. None of that stuff is in here. So it's just for relative comparison. And at the end, the relative comparison is if you did something like the Polaris plan without using the cushion at all, which means you have to take $50,000 out, give or take, for getting the dividends, when the stock market goes down a lot. I don't want to do that myself. I don't want clients to have to do that. But if this is something you're game for, the net result after 18 years is an extra $230,000. So there's that. It worked out. But I mean, it's as expected, as I would expect. A 100% stock portfolio does better than a stock portfolio that is 30% or less as time goes on. In the cushion, a 100% stock portfolio performs better, even with taking out 5% per year. You end up with more money. This does not mean this will, as a fact, work going forward. It's one of those times where I remind people, one of the things that people forget, because they think if you take out 5% per year, you could go broke. Yeah, you could. But keep it in perspective. If your portfolio makes 0% per year of growth, exactly zero, it's just under your mattress. If you take out 5% of that, you can do that for 20 years. So it's still a very long-term viable thing. Now, of course, if the portfolio makes 5% every year and you take out 5% per year, assuming that the increase and the decrease are at the same time, you could do that in perpetuity and never run out of money. So the ideal situation is to make a little bit more than the 5%. And I think it can be done in the long run quite easily, where a combination of bonds and stocks, you can make 6.5, dare I say 7%, and take out 5. Not only will you have your 5% per year, but you'll have a bigger portfolio. One thing I did not do in this case is, as your portfolio grows, assuming that it does grow, you could increase the amount you're taking out per year. You could keep it at 5%, but instead of 50,000, it becomes 52 or 58 or 60. That is not incorporated in any way whatsoever in this model. But I thought it was interesting, and it was expected that you would make more, 230,000, give or take, by doing only stock. What kind of surprised me is it wasn't that much more. And so from my perspective, and you can have a different opinion, to have that cushion, and I named it the cushion because you can lay your head on it and go to sleep at night, to have that cushion in a year where the stock market does like 2008, where it falls 37%, or in 2020 when COVID started and it fell 30%, give or take, in a month or two, to know that you have years, 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, depending on how your portfolio is designed, that you can go for a dozen years or more with stock dividends, bond yields, and selling bonds. So you can just ignore what's going on in the current news. You can ignore the market going down 40%. You could also ignore the market going up 25%, 26% like it did in 2023. Cool. Sometimes you get more than you should. Sometimes you lose more than you want. But with a clever portfolio design, with a good plan, you can ride out those extremes and not see your portfolio fluctuate as much as anyone else, but still, in the long run, kick ass. So I'm very excited. It was a fun thing to do. I'm not happy it took me over 2 hours to do it because my spreadsheet wasn't designed to be tweaked in this way. So I had to go in and fuck around. So assuming I didn't do anything crazy or self-deceptive, you would make about $230,000 more over 18 years without having bonds, sticking to roughly the Polaris plan as it has been presented over the last 18 years. Hopefully that's instructive, helpful to somebody. Let me know. If you hear something in there that I messed up, let me know. And we'll take a break and do something else.
And what's meant to happen when you die and go to heaven? You see a big bright light. You walk towards the light. What's at the end of the light? All your dead relatives. Well, whoop-de-fucking-do. You ever spent a weekend at your grandparents' house? It's fucking shit! You'd be out there for an hour going, wish all me friends would die. Be out there meeting everyone. Hello, Nana. Hello, Grandad. Hello, Uncle who used to touch me. How did you get up here? Oh, that's right, you used to work for the church. You hear that little groan when I said that? When I said you have to work for the church? It's because religious people are in the crowd and they don't like hearing facts. That's a fact. There's been pedophiles in the Catholic Church. It's been on 60 Minutes. Fucking fact. But I say, and it's like, oh, no, because religious people will forgive God for fucking anything. If he, in their mind, he does good things. Rainbows, children's laughter, shit like that, right? But when he does bad things like hurricanes, AIDS, cancer, child molestation, then we just go, oh, well, God works in mysterious ways. What type of an excuse is that? What is mysterious about acting like a fucking asshole? That is like the least mysterious activity since the dawn of time. If I ever date a religious girl, she's going to come home and I'm going to be raping her mum, right? And she's going to look at me and go, what are you doing? And I'm going to go, I'm mysterious. I've always been mysterious.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
Welcome back, everybody. And now I have, as promised, Dan Ellis. How are you today, Dan?
I'm super excited to be here. This is awesome. It's great to hear your voice, man. It's been a minute.
Oh, you're too kind. It's funny. I was doing a little Googling and found, what is this? Salt Lake City Weekly's daily feed. That's a stupid fucking title. Where you are featured and photographed from 2016.
Oh boy.
Holy crap, were you little fresh-faced little boy.
8 years ago, yeah. City Weekly is like it's a local kind of underground-ish paper, magazine, yeah.
And they were talking about your podcast back then, man. How long you guys been fucking around with this?
Since 2014. So we're coming up we will have been around for 10 years in April.
I'm thinking this version of my podcast started in 13.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and I had one before that, and I was on Friends before that. So, God, been a long time, man.
Yeah, time really flies. It's wild how much time can pass before you know it, just in the blink of an eye.
I was just thinking about the time I tracked you down in the Atlanta airport. You remember that?
Uh-huh.
Some good fun, man. I think that was back when Facebook allowed you to share your location and you could see who was around you.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Before they got like security concerns and stuff.
That's always. I'm always very happy to see you and chat with you. You're a super nice guy.
You're very kind. Don't tell people the truth. Keep this up. I like it. I do know, and my listeners know about me. I'm hoping I am on my last day of COVID. And you just had COVID, right?
I did for the first time. Have you had it before?
I have, and I had 5 vaccinations before, and this time it was so modest, I almost laugh about it. Apparently, unlike your make your own adventure, and even the first time I had it, it was a day or two of incredibly bad chills, which is what Ryan Duffy was explaining. He had really bad chills. His description is what I had the first time I had COVID. I mean, like word for word. I'm like, oh my God. But apparently you had something different feel.
Yeah, well, and it's wild. It's the first time I've ever had COVID, and it fucking kicked me right in the ass, man. Like it was awful. I'm fully vaccinated. I think I've had either 4 or 5 vaccinations for COVID. It's the first time I've ever had it, and I'm like 90 to 95 to 100% positive that we got it. Both Tracy and I ended up getting COVID, and I'm sure that we contracted it from our taxi driver on our way home from Mexico. Because our other 2 traveling companions didn't catch it, and that is the only time that we were separated from them. They took one cab, we had to take another one because of all of our bags and all that crap. Yeah. That's the only time we were separated. Both Tracy and I got it, and they avoided it. And it's the first time I've had it, and it kicked my ass.
And I was just listening to the most recent episode of the podcast. By the way, everybody, Godless Rebelution, and it jumped in my head. You were like, "Yeah, since COVID started 2 or 3 years ago, it was 4 years ago, dude."
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Ever since then, like COVID fucked with everything. Timeline, just time, space, continuum, everything. Everything is warped, man. I can't keep track of anything anymore.
Before I ever caught COVID, we were in Italy after it had kind of calmed down some, and you had to have all the cards to go in places, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the white CDC United States card. And one place where they were checking, I showed them that, and they're like, "What is that?" And I go, "This is the one from the United States." And like, "No, we need the green. We need the green one."
The good one.
And I said, I understand that all of Europe and maybe the whole modern world uses the green one, but the United States uses this. This is what I have. And they're like, "Well, I can't let you in." And I'm like, "Is there someone else you can talk to?" I mean, I don't want to make too big of a deal. If I can't get in, I can't get in. But it has worked everywhere else. And so they finally get a manager, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, that's the same thing." And I was like, okay. But it's so funny because if you can get one of those blank cards, you could just fill it out yourself. I mean,
oh, yeah.
It's kind of.
And for a long time, there was a lot of internet commerce from people on the ultra right wing, MAGA, losing their fucking minds kind of people who were making and selling their own COVID certificates that you could use as proof that you had been vaccinated when indeed you had not actually been vaccinated, because nothing better than spreading death among everybody else.
Well, like I have been on record saying, all of the people that got COVID and died, I have not heard a single one of them complain. So right. And it's so funny because right when it happened, I had people ask me, and I said, "So Phil, what do you think? Is the United States going to completely ignore this, or are we going to do the right thing?" And I said, "No, we're going to do what's worse than both of those." And they're like, "What could possibly be worse than ignoring it?" And I said, "We're going to do it half-assed." And so some people will play nice. Other people will say, "Fuck it." And the data will be all sloppy, and there's no way to know what worked and what didn't. And all of the people that took precautions will say it was not as bad as it could have been because I took precautions. And all the people that said fuck reality and science will say, "See, everyone got sick anyway, and all of our craziness didn't make it any worse, so you're all full of shit." And voila, here we are.
Yeah, and you're the governor of your state as his what is it, the state surgeon general or whatever, whatever designation that is.
Yeah.
Now you guys are going to have a great measles outbreak, I hear. Read some headlines today talking about how awesome that's going to be for
I'll
you.
have to check into that because I've missed that thing. I've been more worried about banned books where we're trying to set records, outdoing Texas on banned books. But I also know that we have not done what we're talking about states. Alabama, right? Have you followed the egg thing? Fertilized eggs?
God, yeah. Yeah, that's wild to me. I have I personally know at least 4 separate couples who have used IVF. One of them is are very close friends of mine. I don't want to say too much about their identity in case I don't want to cause them any grief, but very close friends of mine who recently had a child, and they are in a same-sex relationship.
Yeah.
And the person who gave birth to the child was listed as a parent for that child, but the other parent who was legally married to the person who gave birth was not, they had to actually adopt the child after it was born to make sure that everything would be okay.
Yeah.
And the embryo that they used was donated to them from some other friends.
Yeah.
And now this whole Alabama thing, they still have a few embryos in storage. They plan to have more children, and now they're terrified. They don't know what the fuck to do because they've already had to go through all of these other separate legal hoops just to ensure that their child is legally their child. It's just, I can't believe how fucking ridiculous and insane some of the things coming out of the right wing are.
Well, I've been playing with on Facebook and with other people. What if the rule changes that the very moment the egg is fertilized, that is a citizen, It'd be a child, I guess. It wouldn't have voting rights, and it can't do smoke pot, right? Not yet. And so one of my questions is that if an embryo is frozen for 12 years and then is born, would a Catholic priest have to wait 12 more years, or can he rape the child immediately?
Oh, that's really bad. That's really. Oh my God! That's an interesting question, one I hadn't considered for right now. I was wondering. I've seen a bunch of different memes flying around. The ones about if you freeze some embryos and put them in the freezer, can you
write them off?
Claim them as dependents on your tax filings? Can you, if you have them frozen for 10 years, when that child turns 11, if you ever do use them and you have a child that turns 11, does that mean that it's now legally able to drink? Because according to the Alabama Supreme Court, it would be 21 years old.
Yeah.
Can they retire super early? Like, could you freeze embryos and have them implanted 50 years down the line, and then they can retire when they're, 15, 17?
And just to mess with conservatives even more, every time a welfare queen gets pregnant, her payments go up.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't even have to wait to give birth because it's already a child, so her payments go up as soon as she gets knocked up.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you see people like Nikki Haley having to backpedal from basically anything and everything she ever says at the spur of the moment because she's fucking dumb.
She is.
Doesn't know anything about anything and will say just the wildest shit and then have to walk it back within hours because whatever she said was completely uninformed and ridiculous.
Well, I think that's part of the agreement you have to sign when you put an R at the end of your name. In politics. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like the George Santos guy. And I thought I saw, I didn't read it yet. It was fresh in the newsfeed like minutes before we started this call. I thought I saw something where Trump said he supports IVF.
But like what I saw the headlines saying that, Trump comes out, takes a bold stand in favor of IVF, but what does that even mean? Like, does he even understand what IVF is? And if he says that he supports it, what the fuck does that mean? Does that mean that he wants Alabama to reverse their decision? Like, I don't know. I haven't read any of the stories. I just saw that headline and I thought, okay, well, crazy Florida man says something half sane. What is the rest of the story?
Yeah. And I think at this point, it obviously doesn't matter what he says, because 35% of the population is going to vote for him no matter what. He could be sitting in jail naked playing with himself and muttering nonsense, and they'd still vote for him.
Oh, brilliant gambit, sir. Look at you.
Yes.
Touching yourself when nobody else will.
Yeah, no one else is bold enough to show us the path. You've seen Princess Bride, right?
Oh, yes.
Do you remember near the end when Wesley challenges, I think it's the Duke or whatever he is, to a sword battle, not to the death, but to the pain?
Mm-hmm.
That is what I wish for Trump. I wish for him to lose his ability to ambulate and control his arms and to speak, but yet he can see and hear everything as every child and woman weeps in his presence at his disformed figure.
Yeah, I have very similar thoughts.
I stole your Facebook header, by the way.
What's that?
Your cover photo, I think they call it in Facebook.
Oh yeah, I made that one myself.
Oh, that's nice. I stole it. I'm gonna put it up. Matter of fact, I'll put it up after the show's over. But they haven't blocked you for that?
Oh no.
Okay.
No, I think I walk a pretty decent tightrope. I have been suspended from Facebook, but it was only for I think a week or. Yeah, I think the longest suspension I received was a week. And that was for something that I had posted like 8 years earlier.
Oh yeah,
that
I had one of those. Yeah,
was the weirdest. And then I still don't even know what it was.
yeah,
Like,
yep.
like I got a message like out of the blue saying your account has been suspended for however
Violation
long a
of
period
terms
it
of
was. I can't
service
even
or
remember.
whatever. Yeah,
And it was for this post, and then I would click on the link that they provided, and it went nowhere.
Yeah,
so
you can't
I still
see
have
it.
no fucking idea what it was.
I've recently had a post removed because it didn't meet community standards or whatever that is. And I was able to figure out what it was. It was a Bible quote. So I found that wickedly amusing that I quoted the Bible and got blocked for being unethical or immoral or violent or whatever it was. But
Yeah, well, somebody here in Utah, Utah is a very conservative, very red state.
yeah,
And
Been
just
there.
like all of the other conservative red states around, is going through various iterations of trying to ban books in schools. And one of our local residents filed a complaint with one of the school boards to have the Bible removed because it contains,
yeah,
murder, infanticide,
Donkey
patricide,
emissions.
matricide,
Yeah.
all kinds of nastiness.
Yep. How's that going?
I don't know what the latest is on it. I just know that they had filed the complaint to have it reviewed, and I haven't heard anything else since then.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard the fun story. There was a small group of like 5 people in Florida that are responsible for 90% of the banned book requests. And the husband and wife couple apparently were involved in I don't know what to call it, a organized group of people having fun exploring each other's sexuality. And so that became public. And of course, then they're like, well, that's nobody else's business. Well, when you
Our sex lives are nobody else's business.
yeah, when you
Your sex lives, however.
yeah, when you set yourself up as being the morality police and telling people what they can't and can do with their bodies, but yet you're doing the very same things you don't want anyone else to be allowed to do, it is our business. So,
I've heard a couple different takes on why conservatives are like that.
yeah,
The one that seemed to make most sense to me is that they maintain an internal scorecard, right? Where, I fucked up here, but I'll do my best to make sure nobody else does this thing that I'm doing. And then I can then wipe off, anything bad I do, I can counter with something bad that somebody else does that I'm going to stop them from doing.
yeah, maybe. I also think that there's a lot of people that think that it will provide that extra level of control to help them stop doing what urges they have, but it doesn't work. Matter of fact, I have a lot of cheat codes in life. I like to call them little shortcuts to help me get through because, like, for example, I don't follow sports ball at all. And I didn't see the superb owl at all.
It was a very exciting superb owl this year.
That's nice. But like one of my rules, I have a cluster of rules. One of them is if I hear somebody on the news that they're talking about as if I should know who they are, but I don't. If this person is being accused of beating the ever-living shit out of their wife, I'm assuming it's a football player. If this person is being arrested for having gay sex in an airport bathroom, I assume they're a Republican. If they are raping children, I assume it's a priest, right? So I have these little shortcuts to make my life more organized.
Yeah, well, and for the majority of cases where you would run into instances like that, I think you would be spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, it has a pretty good hit ratio. Now, a totally different topic, if I may segue, and you are open to avoid the subject as much as you want. I know on Godless Rebelution, you talked about some family issues and a grandma who passed away. Is that something you are able to talk about, or did you just have your words and you don't want to do it again?
Oh no, I'm happy to talk about it. I figure the more I talk about it, the less I may cry about it. So if I
Okay.
do cry about it, you'll have to pardon me.
Yeah.
But it was
I mean,
was rough, man. It fucking sucked.
I've shared some poignant death moments for family members on my own show, and it's very cathartic, but very very revealing at the same time. So I mean, I understand trying to be careful about it. So I just wanted to see if I understood correctly. You were pretty tight with your grandma, but your dad
I was
is
until I was until about 4 years ago when my father disowned me.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was the firstborn grandchild on both sides of the family for both of my parents.
Yeah.
Their parents, I was the first grandchild, and growing up, I was super tight with my grandma because I was the oldest grandchild, and I was around a whole lot. Like my grandparents are the people who taught me a lot of different things. Golf being one of them, and I still love golf to this day.
Oh, I've golfed once.
And that's in large part due to their influence in teaching. And the whole deal really sucks. And my dad is a giant fucking prick.
Yeah, I think one of the parts I remember kinda, and correct me where I'm wrong, that he placed himself physically in your way to get to the casket at the memorial service, so you couldn't even do like a goodbye at the service.
Yeah, it was kind of wild.
That's pretty epically bad, man. I'm sorry to say, but you know that.
Oh yeah. No, thanks. I appreciate it. He's just a real narcissistic bastard. I am constantly surprised that he doesn't like Donald Trump because he is so much like Donald Trump. Like,
I would have pegged him for a Trump supporter. Yeah.
I would have to, like, not knowing his political opinions on most things, just based on how he acts and the person that he is, I would always have assumed that he would be a Republican. But my grandmother was not.
Yeah.
She, for whatever reason, growing up in a small town in Utah as a Mormon, still somehow ended up being a Democrat. And I think it's because she really, really loved Kennedy.
Yeah.
And was just absolutely heartbroken when he was assassinated, and then maintained a very strong Democratic political viewpoint throughout her life. And I think it's her influence that had my father at least saying things to say that he was in agreement with most Democratic policies and that Donald Trump was awful. But I think primarily that was probably my grandmother's influence.
Well, awesome for her. I do know I've met a few people that voted for Trump that now won't vote for him, but the numbers seem so small. I'm confused by it.
Yeah, I think he's losing support day by day.
Oh, you dreamer. I think there's merit to what you said. A few people that I've talked to that are Trump likers, they'll now call themselves, instead of Trump lovers, or I'll give them a benefit of the doubt. Wow, that's awful still. But
or cult members.
Yeah, the whole NATO thing for some people that are in the military is that's pretty hard to get past. Telling them to Putin that he can do whatever the fuck he wants to NATO members.
But he would encourage them to do whatever, not just that they can, but he would actually encourage them to attack somebody.
And I had someone share a meme about how much money we are wasting in Ukraine. And I found a lovely YouTube video that explains where that money goes and how almost all of it comes back to the United States for supplies and weapons and everything. So the money's basically spent here so that people can defend their homeland, and crudely, they can fight and die in our place, which I don't like that either, because honestly, what I thought we should have done at the very beginning is we should have made a wonderful deal with Poland to sell them some brand new jet fighters at a discount, and then Poland would accidentally leave the keys and all of their MiGs right outside of what is the southern city there? Gdansk? No, that's way in the north. Warsaw? No, that's in the middle. Anyway, they'd leave them in a base, and some pesky Ukrainians come across the border and steal them, right? So no one's responsible for giving them to Ukraine, but somehow they acquired them, and they take off from Poland and they land, and missile launchers and all kinds of stuff, high-speed, powerful drones. We should just be handing them out like they're fucking Pez dispensers so they can just bomb the shit out of the Russian troops, which probably mostly are now prisoners.
We should give them any and every weapon that they are asking for. And I don't think that we should tell them that they should even limit their attacks to within their own borders.
No, absolutely.
Russia fucking attacked them.
Yep.
So all bets are off, man. You attacked us. We're going to fuck some of your shit up.
Now, one thing that I think is funny, maybe they're more of an economic powerhouse than they should be, but as far as a global military power, if you can't do more than take 20% of Ukraine, you're no longer a global power. I'm sorry. And they've had to pull back their quote unquote warships because they're being taken out by homemade drones. I love it. I just read that the Ukrainian grain shipments are now as high or higher than they were before the invasion.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the eastern quarter or fifth of the country is still now invaded and controlled by Russia, and it's going to take some doing to get them out of there. But gosh, just an awful, awful thing. One thing we did discuss in advance, I don't know if you wanted to talk about it, was MLM. Is that something you know about, or is that not really in your wheelhouse? You just kind of got in the email string.
Well, I know that Utah is a hotbed for all kinds of MLM ventures.
Yeah.
Because the populace here is very, very earnest and very kind. Well, mostly earnest and kind and hardworking and super fucking gullible, because their religion has taught them that if somebody within their religion approaches them with any kind of business deal, you should do it, because obviously no good Mormon is going to take advantage of you.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know it. I've told stories about some acquaintances on my podcast, but what's real popular ones? What do you got going out there?
Oh God, I don't know how many different enterprises within the state of Utah are just MLMs themselves that try to make themselves sound like they're not at all. We have all kinds of supplement companies here. We've got all kinds of natural oils and herbal remedies and shit like that. Utah is a hotbed for MLMs and pseudoscience.
I just had a post about having muscle cramps, which might be encouraged by high dosages of caffeine. Because for some people,
taken a lot of caffeine.
Well, I was. I mean, for some people, a cup of coffee and they're sparkling and ready to go for 3 or 4 hours. Mm-hmm. I can do a double espresso and go to bed. It doesn't really, the effect it has on me on very, very, well, the stimulant effect it has on me is very, very small. And so if 60 milligrams is not enough, what do? Right? You go to 100, 120, and I got some drinks that have 160. And you have 2 or 3 of those a day. And now you're getting up to 400 plus milligrams of caffeine in a day. And I had
see there,
yeah,
and like we're getting older. Like there's all kinds of stuff. My body is
shit.
I'm feeling like an alien passenger in my own body lately, just with the weird shit that's going on with it.
Well, my normal morning routine about every other day is now what I call my breakfast salad. It's a salad with blueberries and raspberries and pecans and walnuts, with a drizzle of olive oil, and that's my breakfast because I want to keep going.
I was thinking about this last night, and Well, I was thinking about this last night as I was applying moisturizer to my body.
Yeah.
That it seems to me one of the biggest problems with getting older is that you have a moisture transference issue, where the parts that you want to be moist are dry, and the parts you want to be dry are moist.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly having this battle back and forth with powders and creams to make the dry parts wet and the wet parts dry again, like they were when you were young.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I moved to Florida, by the way, humidity is slightly higher than you have it in Utah.
A little bit.
So my feet, being a type 2 diabetic, I have to worry about my feet drying and not working right and losing sensation in the toes and keeping an eye out for that. But in the winter, my thumbs would split open and bleed at the edge of the nails, and all the dry skin. That's almost completely gone down here. So that's the last time I was in Utah for 2 days, my lips busted open and started to bleed because I wasn't used to it. Right. So, I mean, if you're there all the time, maybe it's not so bad, but, and then, I don't know if I told you, I did go into Mormon Square.
In the Temple Square. Yeah.
Yeah. And I went and I stopped at the information booth by one of the gates, and I said, this ginormous, like 18-foot wall, it's like 4 foot thick or whatever. I said, is that to keep people out or in? They apparently did not appreciate my comedy. And then I happened to be in the building. I didn't know it at the time. I happened to be in the building where they sell the magic underwear in the basement. I could have gone and got some, but then I went on a guided tour by some.
I think you have to actually show them your temple recommend. Like, you have a little card from your bishop.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm sure if I
purchase things like that.
I flirted with one of the gay dudes that I could get a pair. But I had a guided tour from 3 incredibly gorgeous women from the islands out in the Pacific, because that's a very big hunting ground for Mormons. And they took us around and showed us. And the one young lady, talked about her parents worshiped trees and rocks. And then we went up the ramp like we were going up inside of the ball in Epcot, and got to the top platform and saw Space Jesus for my first time. Wow.
What a sight to behold.
Oh,
right?
My God. I had heard about it, but I couldn't believe it was as bad as it was. But yeah, that was a fantastic experience to be there for a couple of hours and then leave. I did see they were, there was a bride and a groom, I'm assuming, getting ready to get married in the temple. And I thought for just a moment that woman's dress was so big that maybe I could hide underneath it and go in with her and actually be inside the temple. But I didn't try. I still regret that.
Well, you would be able to do that when many of her family members were not able to. Maybe she could have smuggled her parents if they were not, faithful Temple Recommend holding Mormons who wanted to witness her wedding but couldn't because they weren't.
What play is that? Nutcracker, where they have all the kids under the dress?
I think it is. Yeah.
Oh my God! Another fun topic I have on my list we could touch if you want to. You got any thoughts on crypto?
Just stay away from it if you can, probably. Like, I have dabbled in the world of crypto.
Yeah.
And I still have some crypto holdings. Overall, though, I think I'm down like $5,000 in the investment that I initially put in.
Well,
and some of that, it's kind of hard to track, because at the time I had one particular type of crypto holding, and I sold some of that at a big, it had a big upswing for a little bit. So I pulled some money out and bought some other stuff, and then now that's all tanked. And from what I was at the high, it's now down more than $5,000.
Wow. So the only thing I can caution you about is, before you start going through your house and throwing out boxes of stuff without looking inside, make sure there's not a hard drive in there. Because maybe you've got some Bitcoin when it was $5. You never know. You never know.
Never can tell.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
have any because I've never bought any.
It seems like, there are other ways to be able to make a decent amount of money that are more steady and more reliable than some wild thing where cat turd whoever can post something, or Elon Musk can post something, and it has this wild up or down swing, and maybe you're on the toilet taking a shit at the time it happens, and all of your money's gone in an instant. That's just, I would much rather put money into my 401k and have somebody else manage that.
One of my favorites, I've been tracking it for years, is Grimace Coin.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I've not heard of Grimace Coin.
You know who Grimace is?
Oh, from like McDonald's?
Yeah, that Grimace, right? And years ago, apparently Elon asked McDonald's if they were going to accept cryptocurrency when he was on his cryptocurrency kick, right? Before he cost all Tesla investors $1 billion or $3 billion in crypto. And McDonald's, the witty person from McDonald's said, stick around because maybe we'll launch Grimace Coin or something like that, as a joke, just a one-off line. Well, some clever people saw that it was tied to Elon, and they launched Grimace Coin and mentioned Elon, and then they promptly sold $5 million of Grimace Coin, and then over the next few months it went to zero.
And then they exited and
they disappeared.
And walked away with a bunch of other people's money.
Yeah.
I guess Grimace Coin is a good term for it because it's what I do whenever I think of Elon.
Yeah, or crypto. But it's one of those things that it's the vast majority of people that have dabbled, as you're talking about in crypto, have lost thousands, several thousands, tens of thousands. There's a few people that have made millions. They're usually the con people, the con men, but the vast majority of people, when this is all said and done and finally fades into the dust, you'll hear stories of people who borrowed $400,000 against their 401k and lost it all, or mortgaged their house and lost it all. The vast majority of people, I am convinced, will be burned or have already been burned with this whole process. And it's just sad because I think it's obvious a con, but
oh yeah,
I don't control.
I actually have a couple different family members who have lost tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
one of them lost almost his entire savings. Like he had been riding this high on, oh yeah, this is going so great and it's doing wonderful, and I started buying Ethereum, and I had some Bitcoin, and now I'm into Ethereum, and I'm doing some Dogecoin and all this other stuff, and he pulled money out of his regular savings and dumped all of that into crypto, and then he stopped contributing to his 401k and was just putting all of that into crypto, and then within like a month he was basically wiped out.
Yeah, I mean it's like I knew a couple once where one of the people retired and was playing blackjack for a living and making money more than their job playing blackjack. And they did that for about 3 years, and they realized that when their retirement funds had gone to zero, that they weren't winning. It took all of the money to go away to realize they weren't winning because of the way the systems run, where you lose 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 2,000, 1,000, and then you win 10, and you think you're a winner.
Mm-hmm.
And you just do that week after week after week, and you think you're a winner, you're a winner, you're a winner, you're a winner. And then when the money runs out, the brutal reality hits you like a fish slapped across the face. Oh, shit. I didn't make money doing that. And the second person had to go back to work, and they both had to work many years longer than they expected to because they lost all the money. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, and I've reached the age now where I have a fair amount in my 401k, and I keep I've noticed that I'm becoming more and more miserly as I get older, because my as my retirement date approaches, it's like, oh, well, if I save more this way, then I can retire 6 months earlier. Or if I do this, maybe I can retire a couple of years earlier, and I won't have to put up with all of this, all of these bullshit politics within the office, and I can just sit at home and do whatever. Or I can be traveling. I won't have to be working for somebody else that entire time.
Well, I can promise you, if you want to sound old, here is the phrase that you can use. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And then list the price of anything, because nobody fucking cares what you paid when you were a kid. I mean, someone who's 30 years old or 25 years old, they think a Snickers at $2.59 in a gas station is just what they cost. They don't know that it used to be 25 cents, and they don't know that it used to be 5 cents.
I was just going to say, you started talking about candy bars and how expensive things were, when I was a kid. And I swear to God, it was maybe 3 nights ago. I was talking with my wife, Tracy, and I don't know what brought it up. Oh, it was, we were watching a show and somebody went to a vending machine and brought back a bunch of candy bars or something for an assembled group of people who they were with. And, they complained about, oh yeah, I spent like $100 and this is all I got. And I turned to Tracy and I'm like, I can remember when I was a kid that my dad would get super excited when Butterfingers would go on sale, and he'd buy 100 Butterfingers because they were on sale 4 for $1.
Yep. I mean, I do think back when I used to drink Diet Pepsi, because I was a huge Diet Pepsi addict. I can't drink it now. It hurts my stomach, like a lot of things, with age. But it used to be like a case. They would sell them in 24, right? Now it's always 12, but it was a pack of 24. I think it was $3.99 at every gas station. And now you can get 2 12-packs for like $6 or $12, $6 a piece or something. Yeah.
I remember when penny candy was actually a penny.
Yeah. And of course, to be fair, though, I mean, this is all inflation, and with time, I think my first full-time job as the third key holder in a very small record store in Champaign, Illinois, my annual salary was $13,000. So, I make more than $13,000 now. So that's also nice. But,
it's wild. Like the car that I have now costs more than I would have made in, 7 or 8 years back when I was younger. It's weird to me too, that how the prices of different things have changed. Yeah. Like my very first computer was over $5,000.
Oh, Jesus Christ, dude.
Oh yeah. It was a long time ago. My very first computer was $5,000, and it was like, that was a lot. Like it's a lot of money now.
Yeah.
Back 30 years ago, it was a whole lot of money. And that computer at $5,000 was, maybe a 50th as powerful as I can get a computer now for under $1,000.
Well, when I was a kid, in my young 20s, and I had a little bit better job, I started collecting laser discs.
Oh, wow.
And
the big ones?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, it was the best quality, right? I mean, so I would get those things, and they were often $45 to $50 a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And now when someone says, hey, there's this movie I want to watch, it's $2.99 to rent it. I'm like, are you fucking mad? You want to pay $3 for a movie you're going to watch once? Are you insane?
Just think of how many, single, small cups of coffee you could get at a local coffee place.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually not doing coffee right now.
Oh, right. So did you cut out caffeine totally?
I went from 450 plus milligrams a day to 0. And
damn, did you You have a lot of headaches following
No,
that transition?
no. I've done this before, and I know people all the time. People are like the headaches, nausea, all kinds of pains and discomfort because you're an addict. I've done it before. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Matter of fact, the next day I felt better because one of the problems with caffeine is it's a diuretic. And so I didn't know the caffeine was causing it. I was having this constant need to drink more, which I was attributing to my type 2 diabetes, because I know that can be a thing with diabetics. And so I was always drinking water and then a caffeinated beverage and then water and caffeinated beverage. And I'm like, oh my God, I am drinking so much liquid during the day. Something's got to be wrong with me. So the next day, when I stopped having the caffeine, I would just drink some water. And actually for a few days now, I've been having Gatorade, but I'm drinking like a third of what I was drinking before, but I don't feel anywhere near as thirsty. So I was like, God damn it. I may just have to not do, you know what? I think if I'm in Italy and I have an espresso, while I'm walking 6 miles a day, I'm going to be okay. But I can't drop back those 150 to 200 milligram drinks several times a day anymore. That's just bad voodoo for me, I think. So here's Dan playing Phil's doctor for a minute. So you were taking caffeine, and it sounded like you were using it as a stimulant to help you stay awake. How are you sleeping at night? I'm like a fucking baby, man.
How much sleep do you get every night?
Even with the COVID, well, I've had COVID. I'm getting over COVID. The week before, I got a cold from a cruise, and I thought for sure that was COVID. I tested 3 different times. No COVID, no COVID, no COVID. But I was coughing so hard that I wasn't sure if I was going to puke or shit myself. And I decided later to call it, it's not coughing, they're ab exercises, because my abdomen hurts so fucking bad from the muscle fatigue, from trying to cough. And I finally just got over that. And then our house guest caught COVID, and then I caught COVID from them. And I had really bad, I had moderate chills for about 8 hours. And I went to bed and slept 12 fucking hours.
Oh, man.
And that was the same time I stopped the caffeine. So the last 3 nights I've slept like 12, 9, and 10 hours. I feel like I'm 10 years younger, man. And I think it's partly because not being sick and the caffeine was hurting me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just making it all up, but I feel a lot better.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I got COVID, I typically sleep, I was sleeping between 6 and 7 hours every night. And then I got COVID, and there were a couple of nights. One day I slept for 11 and a half hours.
Yeah.
And then I only got out of bed because I had to use the bathroom so bad. And I would have gone back to bed, but I had some other things come up that I just couldn't. But it wiped me out. And ever since I had COVID, I'm now getting between 7 and 9 hours sleep.
Nice. Yeah. So you're still recovering, it's all good.
Yeah.
So hopefully either later tonight or tomorrow I'll test negative for COVID, fingers crossed, and give it a few more days to be responsible for the people that, might be where I'm going to go, and then I'm good to go. But anyway.
Glad to hear you're on the mend, man, because it's awful. And I'm fairly certain, I'm very happy that I had not had COVID until very recently. Yeah. Because I fear that, without all of the vaccinations and all of the time and allowing COVID to kind of burn itself out a little bit, I'm sure I would have ended up in the hospital had I caught it much earlier, because
you probably would have, because
kicked my ass.
The vast majority of viral infections are less deadly as they stay around longer. Because the ones that are really deadly kill all the hosts. and don't propagate, and then variants that are more likely to spread but less likely to kill start to outnumber. It's evolution. I mean, you're going to have to argue with some Christians about that, but
well, if you're looking at microevolution versus macroevolution,
we could probably do this for 3 hours, but I want to take your whole night. Tell people how they can reach you, how they can find the show, and all that kind of stuff.
you can find me on the Book of Faces very easily. Just look for Dan Ellis, American Atheists, Atheist of Utah. That would be me. You can find the show at Godless Rebelution. That's pretty easy. It's a portmanteau of revolution and rebellion.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my two primary hangouts these days. I don't do a whole lot of other social media presences. I have accounts other places, but I don't use them very often. And even my Facebook usage has dropped a lot lately because I'm so busy with work and a bunch of other stuff. But those are the two main places to find me for sure. Well,
Dan Ellis, thank you for being on the Phil Ferguson Show.
Thank you for having me, Phil. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
Hey, poor! You don't have to be poor anymore! Jesus is here!
Thank you for listening to the show. I'm glad you're still here. I appreciate it very much. You can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. You can also do that on Stitcher. The show is originally hosted, natively posted. The RSS feed is held at Spreaker, so you can get the show at Spreaker. It's almost on every podcast player, to the best of my knowledge. They share those things pretty far and wide now. I don't know what else to tell you today. Oh, I did have a bitch about Audacity. That's the free software, which is nice. Free software. It does a lot of things that I use to record. It updated, and a lot of times when it updates, it changes settings on you. And I just found one of those things when I recorded the intro. It saved it at a ridiculously high quality bit rate that took like 10 times the size of a normal file, or what a file should be of that amount of minutes. But I fixed it because I was like, why is this taking so long to save? So anyway, hopefully the quality is good enough that, it sounds good, but low enough that you can load it onto your phone in a reasonable amount of time. Anywho, I'm just going to wrap up show 484, and it is March of 24, and I will be at the American Atheists Conference in Philadelphia for Easter, so hopefully you can go there. And if you do go there and you see me, please feel free to come up and say hello. Until then, ciao.